There's something deeply unsettling about the modern world that most people can feel, but very few can explain. It's not just the noise, it's not just the speed, it's the feeling that something essential is missing. If you grew up without screens dominating your childhood, you've probably noticed it. Conversations feel shallower, attention feels fragile. People panic over things that once felt manageable. Silence feels unbearable to them. Waiting feels impossible. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. It's not because they're weak, it's because they were wired differently. There is a mental ability that is becoming extremely rare in the modern world. It doesn't show up on resumes, it isn't measured in IQ tests, and yet it quietly determines who stays grounded when everything becomes chaotic. People who grew up without screens develop the ability to generate meaning internally, without needing constant stimulation from the outside world. This single trait changes everything. Modern psychology has a name for what most people experience today when stimulation disappears. They call it cognitive discomfort, the uneasy feeling that arises when the mind has nothing immediate to consume. No content, no notifications, no noise. For many people, that discomfort feels unbearable. That's why silence feels heavy. That's why waiting feels irritating. That's why boredom feels almost painful. But if you grew up without screens, boredom didn't threaten you, it trained you. When there was nothing to do, you didn't escape the moment. You stayed inside it, and inside that emptiness, your brain learned something crucial: how to create direction without instruction. You learn to ask yourself, what now? And then answer it. That ability is not trivial. It is the foundation of independent thought. Research in developmental psychology shows that when children are constantly entertained, their brains become dependent on external input to regulate emotion and focus. When entertainment is removed, anxiety increases, frustration spikes, and attention collapses. But when children are forced to face empty time, their brains adapt by building internal structure. That structure becomes imagination, then problem-solving, then self-guided focus. This is why people who grew up without screens often feel mentally stronger in isolation. Their mind doesn't collapse inward when stimulation disappears. It expands. They can sit with a thought, follow it, question it, refine it. This is also why modern life often feels strangely exhausting to them. They don't need constant input, but they're surrounded by it. They don't need noise, but noise follows them everywhere. Their nervous system was trained in a slower, deeper environment, and modern overstimulation feels like mental pollution. Another consequence of this trait is how differently attention works. People who grew up without screens learned sustained attention naturally. There was no endless stream of novelty, no instant reward loop. If something was boring, you either made it interesting or abandoned it entirely. That meant when you chose to engage, you stayed engaged. Books were read cover to cover. Games lasted entire afternoons. Conversations weren't interrupted every 30 seconds. Neuroscience shows that sustained attention strengthens the brain's executive function. This includes impulse control, emotional regulation, and long-term planning. Modern screen exposure fragments attention. Pre-digital childhood consolidated it. This is why many people from that generation can focus deeply when they choose to, and also why they become frustrated with constant interruptions, shallow multitasking, and surface-level engagement. Their mind doesn't switch modes easily. It commits, and commitment feels uncomfortable in a world addicted to novelty. There's also something deeper happening here, something few people talk about. People who grew up without screens developed a tolerance for mental friction. Thinking was not always pleasant, waiting was not always comfortable, silence was not always soothing, but instead of escaping discomfort, they adapted to it. This is critical. Modern life trains people to eliminate discomfort instantly. A bad feeling appears, and it's numbed with content. A thought becomes heavy, and it's interrupted. A moment becomes quiet, and it's filled. Over time, the brain stops learning how to endure internal pressure. But if you grew up without that escape hatch, your brain learned resilience at a cognitive level. You didn't avoid discomfort, you moved through it. This is why many people wired this way are harder to manipulate emotionally. They don't need immediate relief. They don't panic at uncertainty. They don't require constant reassurance. They trust their internal compass. However, this trait also comes with a hidden cost. When you can generate meaning internally, the external world often feels shallow. Small talk feels empty. Endless entertainment feels repetitive. Surface-level interaction feels draining. This is why many people with this wiring become selective, withdrawn, or misunderstood. Not because they dislike people, but because they crave depth. They are not antisocial, they are anti-superficial, and modern culture rewards superficiality. This creates a quiet internal conflict. You are wired for depth in a world that moves fast, skims often, and rarely pauses. So you adapt, you observe, you withdraw. And many people misinterpret that as detachment, arrogance, or disinterest. But it's not. It's discernment. In the next part, we'll explore the second rare mental trait developed by people who grew up without screens, one that explains why they remain calm under pressure, while others collapse into panic. Once you recognize this trait, you'll understand why chaos affects you differently than most. If you grew up before constant screens, notifications, algorithms, and digital stimulation, your mind developed under conditions that no longer exist. And that environment shaped you in ways modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. This video is not about nostalgia. It's not about saying one generation is better than another. It's about understanding a rare mental wiring that is quietly disappearing. Because people who grew up without screens didn't just live differently, they think differently. And once you understand why, you'll never look at yourself or the modern world the same way again. Most people today assume that technology simply added convenience, faster communication, easier entertainment, more information, but they miss the deeper cost. The human brain does not evolve as fast as technology does. For thousands of years, childhood followed a certain rhythm: boredom, exploration, risk, silence, long stretches of unstructured time. And inside that emptiness, the mind learned how to build meaning on its own. If you grew up without screens, boredom wasn't a crisis. It was a starting point. You didn't reach for a device the moment stimulation dropped. You had to invent something: a game, a plan, a thought, a solution. And every time you did that, your brain strengthened a muscle most people today never fully develop. Psychologists call this self-generated cognition, the ability to create direction, focus, and meaning without external stimulation. Modern childhood rarely trains this. Today, stimulation is constant, screens fill every gap, silence is eliminated, waiting is removed. Discomfort is interrupted instantly, and while this feels harmless, the brain adapts in a dangerous way. When stimulation is always provided, the mind stops learning how to generate it. That's why so many people today feel lost when they're alone, why they panic in silence, why they struggle to think deeply without distraction. But if you grew up without screens, solitude didn't frighten you. It trained you. You learned early that your mind could entertain itself, that thoughts could stretch, that ideas could form slowly, that time didn't need to be filled to be valuable. This is why many people from pre-digital childhoods feel strangely calm in situations that overwhelm others. Their nervous systems were trained in environments where nothing happened instantly, and that patience became internalized. Another critical difference is how responsibility entered your life. Before screens, childhood freedom came with real consequences. When you left the house, you were responsible for your decisions. There was no GPS, no constant supervision, no digital safety net. You assessed risk not by reading warnings, but by experiencing reality. You learned what mattered through consequence, not instruction. Modern psychology shows that children who experience manageable risk develop stronger decision-making systems and lower baseline anxiety as adults. They learn to distinguish between real danger and discomfort. That's why many people who grew up without screens don't panic easily. They don't overreact. They assess, adapt, and move forward. Their brains learned resilience organically. But here's the part most people misunderstand. This wiring doesn't make life easier in the modern world. It often makes it harder. When you're wired for depth, modern superficiality feels exhausting. When you're comfortable with silence, constant noise feels invasive. When you value independence, excessive validation feels hollow. This is why many people who grew up without screens feel out of place today. Not superior, just misaligned. They aren't broken. They're simply calibrated for a world that moved faster than their nervous system was meant to follow. And this brings us to something important. The traits you carry weren't designed for attention economies, algorithmic dopamine loops, or endless digital performance. They were designed for reality, for thinking, for problem solving, for solitude, for responsibility. In the next part, we'll explore the first rare mental trait this generation developed, one that modern psychology struggles to recreate artificially. And once you recognize it in yourself, you'll understand why certain things in life feel natural to you, while others never will. There's a second mental trait that almost never develops in screen-saturated childhoods. It explains why some people remain calm in chaos, while others panic instantly. Why some assess danger accurately, while others exaggerate it. Why some act decisively under pressure instead of freezing. This trait is emotional calibration through real-world risk. People who grew up without screens were exposed to something modern childhood avoids at all costs: unmanaged uncertainty. You didn't grow up protected from every possible outcome. You grew up navigating the world directly, climbing trees too high, riding bikes too fast, exploring places without supervision, making mistakes without immediate adult intervention. Every one of those experiences trained your nervous system. Modern psychology confirms this. When children are exposed only to simulated risk, their brain never learns how to differentiate between actual danger and perceived threat. Screens show danger without consequence. Reality teaches consequence without dramatization. That difference rewires the brain. Children who experience physical risk develop what researchers call adaptive threat assessment. Their nervous system learns proportion. Not everything is an emergency. Not every discomfort is danger. Not every fear requires avoidance. Compare that to modern anxiety. Many people today experience chronic stress, not because life is objectively more dangerous, but because their nervous system was never trained to tolerate uncertainty. Their brain learned fear visually, not experientially. If you grew up without screens, fear was learned through the body, not the imagination. You fell, you got hurt, you recovered, and your brain stored that data. That's why you don't catastrophize easily. Your system knows the difference between discomfort and collapse. This is also why emotional reactions feel exaggerated to you. You notice how small problems provoke extreme responses, how minor setbacks trigger panic, how uncertainty becomes unbearable for many. Your nervous system doesn't respond that way because it was calibrated early. You learned that discomfort passes, that pain heals, that panic is often unnecessary. This trait shows up strongly in adulthood. In work environments, people wired this way handle pressure without theatrics. They don't need emotional reinforcement every step. They focus on solving the problem, not dramatizing it. In relationships, they don't panic at conflict. They don't escalate emotionally. They pause, assess, and respond. This is often misread as emotional distance, But it isn't. It's emotional regulation. Another side effect of this trait is lower baseline anxiety. Research shows that children who engaged in unsupervised play exhibit lower anxiety levels as adults. Their nervous system learned to self-regulate without external control. They didn't rely on adults, screens, or systems to calm them. They learned to calm themselves. That skill is disappearing. Today, emotional regulation is outsourced to devices, to constant reassurance, to digital distraction. Remove those supports and anxiety spikes. But if you grew up without them, your nervous system doesn't collapse when stimulation disappears. You remain grounded. This is why people with this wiring often feel out of sync with modern emotional culture. They don't react fast enough. They don't escalate quickly. They don't emotionally perform. And because modern culture rewards visible emotion, they are often overlooked, misunderstood, or underestimated. Yet in real crises, these are the people others look to. The calm one, the steady one, the one who doesn't panic. There is also a darker side to this trait. Because your nervous system is resilient, you may tolerate environments others cannot. Toxic workplaces, dysfunctional systems, long periods of isolation. You don't break easily, but that doesn't mean you aren't affected. Many people with this wiring learn to endure rather than exit, to adapt rather than demand better. That strength, if unexamined, can turn into silent self-neglect. This is why awareness matters. Strength is not meant to trap you. It's meant to protect you. Understanding how your nervous system was shaped allows you to use it intentionally, not unconsciously. The modern world doesn't need more emotional intensity. It needs more emotional regulation. And people wired this way carry something rare. They don't react, they respond. In the next part, we'll explore the third mental trait, one that explains why people who grew up without screens often feel comfortable being alone, while others fear it deeply. This trait reveals why solitude feels restorative to you, not threatening. There is a third mental trait that almost completely disappears in screen-dominated childhoods. It explains why some people feel at peace alone, while others feel anxious. Why silence feels nourishing to some and unbearable to others. Why being alone strengthens certain minds instead of weakening them. This trait is deep solitude capacity. People who grew up without screens did not experience solitude as punishment. They experienced it as normal. You spent long hours alone in your room, lying on the floor, listening to music, reading without interruption, walking outside with nothing demanding your attention. There was no constant stimulation competing for your awareness, and because of that, something critical happened. Your mind learned how to exist without external input. Modern psychology shows that most people today struggle with solitude not because they dislike being alone, but because they were never trained for it. Silence exposes the mind. When stimulation disappears, unresolved thoughts surface, emotions rise. Identity questions appear. For people raised on constant digital input, this feels threatening, so they avoid it. They fill every gap with noise, every pause with scrolling, every quiet moment with distraction. But if you grew up without screens, solitude became a place of orientation, not fear. Your mind learned to organize itself internally. This is rare. Research on pre-digital childhood shows that people raised without constant stimulation develop stronger internal narrative coherence. In simple terms, they have a clearer inner voice. They don't need external validation to exist. They don't panic when alone with their thoughts. They can sit with discomfort without escaping immediately. This trait explains why you often feel drained by shallow interaction. It's not social anxiety, it's cognitive mismatch. Your mind is used to depth. Modern interaction is optimized for speed. Small talk feels empty. Constant updates feel intrusive. Noise feels invasive. You don't dislike people. You dislike fragmentation. Another consequence of deep solitude capacity is independent identity formation. When children grow up without screens, they are less exposed to constant comparison. There were no curated lives to measure yourself against. No algorithm deciding what mattered. No external scorecard of likes, trends, or popularity. Your identity formed internally, through trial, through boredom, through imagination, through self-dialogue. Modern identity is often assembled externally. Likes become validation, trends become personality, belonging becomes mimicry, but your sense of self was not shaped that way. This is why you may feel resistant to trends, why you don't feel pressure to perform constantly, why you are often indifferent to digital approval. And this is often misinterpreted. People may see you as distant, detached, uninterested, but the truth is simpler. Your mind doesn't depend on constant reflection from others to feel real. You don't need to be seen to exist. This trait creates another pattern that often goes unnoticed. You think before you speak because you are used to internal processing. Your thoughts develop fully before they exit. In contrast, screen-based communication trains people to think out loud, to react publicly before understanding privately. That difference creates friction. In fast-moving environments, quiet thinkers are often overlooked. They don't perform intelligence. They don't broadcast certainty. They don't compete for attention. But when decisions matter, they tend to be right more often. Because their thinking is slower, deeper, and internally consistent. This trait also explains why people with this wiring often feel older than their age. Not in cynicism, in composure. They are less emotionally volatile, less reactive, less impulsive. Their nervous system isn't constantly hijacked by novelty, and because of that, their presence carries weight. But there is a shadow side. Deep solitude capacity can turn into isolation if not balanced. Because you are comfortable alone, you may delay connection. Because you are self-contained, you may underestimate the need for community. Because silence feels safe, you may avoid expressing needs. This is not weakness. It's an untrained strength. Solitude is powerful, but it must be chosen, not defaulted to. The modern world pushes people toward noise. Your wiring pulls you toward silence. The key is intention. Solitude should sharpen you, not shrink you. Independence should empower you, not isolate you. Understanding this trait allows you to use it correctly. You are not antisocial. You are internally anchored. And in a world that has lost its internal structure that makes you different, in the final part, we will tie all these traits together and address the most important question of all. What does it mean to carry mental traits that are becoming extinct? And how do you live with them in a world that no longer understands them? When you look at all these traits together, a pattern emerges. People who grew up without screens didn't just develop different habits, they developed a different mental architecture. Their minds were shaped by space, not saturation. By boredom, not stimulation. By experience, not observation. And that creates a quiet tension in adulthood, because the modern world is not designed for this kind of mind. It rewards speed over depth, visibility over substance, reaction over reflection. So if you carry these traits, you may often feel out of place. Not because you are outdated, but because your operating system belongs to a different rhythm. This is why you may feel frustrated by how shallow conversations have become, why constant notifications feel exhausting rather than exciting, why you struggle to explain to others why being busy feels empty. Your mind expects meaning, not noise. And here is the most important realization. These traits are not disadvantages, they are becoming rare advantages. As attention spans collapse, your ability to focus becomes power. As people lose the capacity to sit with themselves, your comfort with solitude becomes strength. As decision-making becomes reactive, your internal structure becomes clarity. The world is moving fast, but speed without direction leads nowhere. You were trained for direction, however, this comes with responsibility, because rare traits only remain valuable if they are used consciously. If you allow your depth to turn into withdrawal, it weakens you. If you let your independence turn into detachment, it isolates you. If you retreat completely from the modern world, your strengths go unseen. The goal is not to reject the present, it is to anchor it. Your mind is not meant to escape society. It is meant to stabilize it. Think about this. Every era needs people who can slow things down, who can see patterns instead of trends, who can think independently when groupthink dominates. These people are rarely loud. They are rarely celebrated early, but they shape outcomes quietly. History is full of them. The thinkers, the builders, the stabilizers. People whose minds were not easily hijacked. If you grew up without screens, you were given a form of training that no longer exists, not because it was planned, but because the world was slower. And now, that slowness lives inside you. The danger is forgetting its value, because the modern environment constantly pressures you to adapt downward, to speed up, to simplify, to fragment. Resist that pressure. Your strength is coherence. Your advantage is internal order. Your value is not in keeping up with noise, but in offering clarity where noise dominates. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to perform constantly. You don't need to dilute your thinking to fit short attention spans. What you carry matters, and the people who recognize it often recognize themselves in you. If this video resonated, it's likely because it described something you've always felt but never had language for. And if that's the case, you're not alone. There are more people quietly navigating the same internal landscape. Different minds, different wiring, same questions. If you want to continue exploring ideas like this, not as trends but as reflections, you already know what to do. And if you feel like sharing, leave a comment with one trait you recognized in yourself. Not to agree, not to prove anything, just to reflect.